George,
let me also just tag on to that too, because I think part of what we've seen out of the research is that the people who are most likely to have those kinds of struggles are the ones who try to be the solo, I've got all the answers kind of leader. And so they have to keep everything pent up inside. They can't let people in. They've got to put on the facade because the expectations are outrageous about what any individual can do. Where we see the most effective leadership is where you have individuals who truly are leaders who are working in a team-based environment, where it's a small group of leaders who share the burdens, address the challenges as a unit rather than one individual having to be the person who knows all, can do all, and satisfies all needs. Nobody can do that.
And the concept of team, if you think of it in a church setting, it doesn't have to be paid staff. It can be actually really embracing and engaging the people that are in the congregation to be part of that team so that you're not doing it alone.
And we've had a lot of small churches who say, oh, gee, we can't afford another pastor. You don't need to. I mean, in Scripture, nobody was paid to pastor. You know, the whole idea was God gave you gifts, use the gifts.
I think the best, most comprehensive youth leader I ever had as a pastor was a couple in the church who were volunteers.
Yes.
And they were so committed. They had teenagers of their own, and they were so committed. Did a terrific job. And again, I've seen that's the case. But here's a question that often occurs to me. We're seeing all of these books about leadership, hearing all of this stuff about leadership principles and so on. I don't see anybody writing a book about following. Like, if everybody's a leader, nobody's a leader. And it seems to me that we almost create the impression with all of our emphasis on leadership that if you're not a leader, you're a second-class citizen. Is there not a case to be made for following? George?
I think there's a huge case. I actually gave a publisher an outline for a book called Followership.
Well, there you go.
And they turned it down.
Won't sell, right?
That's right, Nobody wants to be a follower. Everybody wants to be a leader, you know? But yeah, you're absolutely right. And what makes it even more difficult to be a follower these days, when you look at cultural trends, one of the biggest ones, of course, is the move toward hyper-individuality. Everything is about me. I'm an independent agent. Nobody can tell me what to do. I'll make my own choices. Thank you very much. And so the whole idea of putting yourself under the umbrella of somebody else's leadership is, in some respects, an unpopular idea.
Yeah, it's almost demeaning, you know, as you say, in our hyper-individualistic culture. Why did you write the book, Mentoring Wisdom, Carson? People ask you to do it, or if something was burning in your soul? Why did you write it?
It's a combination of both of those two things. I think that it was piqued for me from attending the Lausanne Congress in Cape Town a year ago. And the number of young leaders that I was introduced to from around the world who are longing for somebody to speak into their life and to help them with their leadership, and seemingly unable to find that in their local communities. And Doug Birdsall, the chair of Lausanne, who wrote the foreword for the book, really was encouraging me to put some of my thoughts in a succinct form that would be accessible to people literally around the globe.
And for those of you, our viewers who are not familiar with Arrow, basically describe to me the mechanics of it. How does it work? How does someone connect with Arrow? And how does someone get involved with Arrow? How much does it require of them? How long does it last?
Just succinctly, it's we go out and we try to find, I use the phrase leaders with potential, not potential leaders. So we're trying to define and discern the people who actually have a gift of leadership in their life. We then ask them if they would like to enter into a journey with us that lasts 2 years in length. They come together and we assess them at the front end. We do research into how do they lead right now, what's their makeup, how are they spiritually gifted. Then we bring 24 of those people together in a class, and they meet every 6 months over the 2 years. We have a local mentor that meets with them for 2 to 3 hours a month, and we have on-site mentors during the residentials. They stay working where they are working. We want that actually to be part of the journey. And as we gather them together in a cohort, we really try to bring in some of the best practitioners of leadership in the Christian world to speak into their lives and to help them to be led more by Jesus, to lead more like him, and to lead more to him. And just over 20 years, this model is not a new model. We're trying to practice in our context how Jesus discipled people. And it was a combination of actions and teachings all happening at the same time. And we do it in a community so that there's that iron sharpens iron thing that takes place when we're all together.
Do you think this hunger for leaders, and I know what you're talking about, certainly in terms of international leaders and the work I'm doing in Africa, I'm dealing with leaders there all of the time. Well, here's an example. I had a conference a few years ago in Kisumu, Kenya. We had 3,000 pastors there for 4 days. We sponsored it, and I brought in the speakers, and I also spoke at it. At one point, I asked these 3,000 pastors, 3,000 sitting there in front of me. By the way, the electricity failed at that point in time, and I had no microphone. And so I'm speaking to 3,000 guys just with the strength of my voice. It wasn't easy, but nevertheless, I said, how many of you are pastors' kids, preachers' kids? Now, you have 3,000 pastors there. I'm expecting, several hundred to raise their hands. 3. 3 out of 3,000. What is that, 0.001%? And I'm thinking, there's something wrong with this picture. Because it seems to me that when it comes to ministry, and both of you are specialists in the Christian world, there is a powerful message that's being given by the fact that more and more preachers' kids do not want to go into the ministry.
Right.
Why do you suppose that is, George?
Well, there are a lot of possible reasons. And I think there's 2 different ways to look at that. One is to say, wow, that's a real problem. The other is to say, maybe that's a good thing.
Oh, well, yeah, sure.
I mean, maybe they're looking at what it takes to be a pastor and saying, boy, I haven't been called to that. Or perhaps even saying, maybe I could be more effective in a different approach to ministry. Not to put down the local church at all, but to say, you know what, maybe through the circle of contacts I have, maybe through my place of work, maybe through my work in the community, apart from an organized religious institution, I can have an even bigger impact. So I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing. But certainly one of the things that it suggests is that they've seen up close the toll that kind of ministry takes on an individual, and they're leery of it.
Yeah,
I think that it also can be related to the fact that their father or mother, whoever the pastor is, may not be gifted to be that, and so the toll that's paid is because there's not good alignment between spiritual gifts and what they're actually doing.
Well, I wondered about that this week when I read a very interesting report about the number of pastors who are becoming atheists. And much to Dawkins' delight, he's actually creating a support group for pastors who are becoming atheists. And I'm thinking, if that in fact happens, it tells me something about that pastor, in terms of his sense of personal relationship with the Lord from the get-go. Maybe he's become a champion of a subcultural life. He grew up in the church. This is what young people are supposed to do, and be an example. Yada yada yada. But never really having a living relationship with the Lord for themselves. We're just getting into this conversation here, and our time has flown. The book is called Mentoring Wisdom: Living and Leading Well, and you can access it, friends, through the Crossroads e-store, and just log on to crossroads.ca and follow the crossroads.ca/store. There you go. That's what you got to do, /store. Or you can call 1-800-265-3100. There you go. And we'll be hearing more from Carson Pue and George Barna later in the month. So this is not the last you'll be hearing from them, which relieves me because I really think we need another hour with these guys, don't you? Thanks for coming by, fellas.
Thank you.
Be back with more of it after this.